On today's episode, we have not only Dr. Nick and Benny, but also Kelly.
Hello.
And we are going to go on this mission of myth busting. So listen in.
Let's talk about death, baby. Let's talk about grief and mourning. Is it argumental or existential? What's it mean to me? Let's talk about death.
Hi, I'm Benny Cabal, and I'm a funeral professional.
And I'm Nicholas Cabal, a psychologist.
Hey, Nick, let's talk about death.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're just going to do this a fun and new, interesting way. So Kelly has some questions for us.
Hey.
Kelly can tell us how she came up with them because it's an awesome story. And then we'll go into trying to answer this the best that we can. How does that sound?
You know what? We're going to pause just for a quick second for all the listeners out there who don't know who Kelly is. Kelly, would you please just do a quick synopsis of who you are? And just so that everybody who hasn't known who you are knows who you are.
Wait a second. You're saying people haven't listened since day one to know who Kelly is?
There might be that new person that's like, you know what?
That's fair.
I'm going to
That's
check
fair.
this out. And they're like,
That's fair.
Who is Kelly?
Yeah. So for the listeners out there, I've showed up on a couple episodes, but I'm usually behind the scenes as the producer of this awesome podcast. And today we are going to do a little game. We had a couple games in the past. I believe it was, what was it? Q&As or rapid fire?
Rapid
Fire, baby.
Rapid fire. Well, you know what? This time we're doing myth busting. We're
Oh.
doing myth busting the funeral profession. Yeah, myth busting. And okay, so here's the funny story of the background about how I got these myths. I decided, hey, what better way to find myths about the funeral profession than AI? Come on now.
Ask a
Robots.
robot.
Robots.
They're-
I mean, they know everything, right?
Well,
They think they do.
They are listening. That's for sure.
So I did a little chat GPT, did some prompting of the AIs. And so this list of some myths came out. And it literally said that these myths often stem from misunderstandings, outdated practices, or cultural norms that have evolved over time. So that this is a compilation from AI of the myths that have evolved over time. Are you guys ready to get into this or what?
Oh, yeah, baby. Oh, yeah.
Hit it up.
Give us
Okay, so I'm going to say these myths and you can just talk about the real stuff here and your thoughts on it. Some of them might be ridiculous, people, because this is AI generated.
Who cares?
You know, though,
So,
I'm sure some of these questions, even if they sound ridiculous, have been thought of from possible listeners. So let's do it. Let's see what
well,
AI.
it's a combined list of AI collection. So let's see what happens. It's not so much questions, it's basically myths that you're going to bust. Are you guys ready for myth busting the funeral profession?
There you go, baby. Myth number one. What do we got?
All right. So, number 1, embalming is always required. What do you think?
I need the buzzer.
Oh, wait, don't forget about that laugh or the clap track, by the way.
Which
Yeah,
one do
we
you
got
got, Nicky boy?
sound effects on our new equipment.
There we go. Is that going to get annoying after the 30th?
Wait, what is that? I didn't even hear that one.
Oh, wait. There you go. This is a drum roll.
I don't know. There's so many on here. But
Yeah, I'll just answer this one. So embalming is not a requirement of the state or the or the actual government. It is required after a certain amount of time or a situation where it's a harmful disease that could be transmitted. Thank you. That's the word I was looking
Transmitted.
for. It is not required always. That is the real answer.
There's a lot of religious practices that they cannot be embalmed, correct?
Yeah. Well, yes, absolutely. Especially, I can just give you one: the Jewish faith, the traditional. I'm talking the old school traditional Jewish faith. you cannot embalm. And if you do, because some situations do occur, you have to literally put all of the blood in jars and put it with the body, so the body is whole when it goes into the ground.
Wait,
It's a
hold on.
special.
Blood in jars?
Yep.
Like a mason jar?
Well,
And
I
how do
don't
you get the
it's
blood in
pretty
there?
special.
It reminds me of the Egyptians with the
The cats?
no, they
Yeah,
had
canopic jars.
synaptic. They had
Yeah.
literally had jars where
Where
you
you put
put
the
like
organs.
like the
Yeah.
heart and
Oh.
We
Wow.
have to answer your question, Kelly, even though this is not an AI question, we have instruments that we can actually control the blood movement.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Well, there's a myth busted
there you
right
go.
there.
There's a
That's a
myth.
myth buster. Okay, that's a fact.
That's a
Um,
fact, baby.
okay. Well, yeah, that's what AI said. What you said.
Yeah.
Embalming is not required by law in many cases and is often optional. So good job, Benny. Let's get a hand clap on that.
One for one. There you go.
On the sound
Yeah,
effects.
come on, Doc. You're the sound effect guy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Nick's got the sound effects.
There we go. Kind
Way
of
to
sounds
go,
like
Benny.
rain.
Way to go, Benny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that does sound like
It does, right? That's what I think every time.
I'll turn it up a little bit. Maybe that'll.
Oh no, it's
yeah, give us some rain.
Oh, there we go. That's a little.
Oh Lord, that just sounded like that white noise or whatever.
Well, it takes a while for the wooer to come in, so that's
Yeah. We need some woo woo. All right, so here is the next one from our friend AI. Funerals must be expensive.
Okay, so I'm going to answer this one with this. I think everything right now in general is expensive. So, but with that being said, I think that there is a lot of different packages and different things that a funeral professional can do for you to meet your financial stability. Yes, there is. You can have an expensive funeral, just like you can have an expensive car, but you can also get an affordable car. You can also
And an expensive wedding.
you could get an expensive wedding, or you can have an affordable wedding, or you can go to what is it? Do you go to the little chapel in Las Vegas?
Elvis, baby.
Yeah, there you go, man.
You know, I think that the reality to this thing is that I think the funeral professional will work with what you got. They will try to set up a reasonable funeral, with the expenses that you have. Now, with that being said, this is the hard part that a lot of people, I think, struggle with when it comes to funeral homes. Funeral homes are a business. Whether you like that or not, they have to pay bills. It's not like they're, they don't have to like pay for electricity and water and gas and all that stuff. I think that's where I think a lot of people get a little bit caught off guard because yes, they are people that want to help. And yes, they are normally people that got the calling to do it. They still have to keep their doors open. So there is a lot of things that go into what they do. And again, there's an episode, if you go back, and it kind of explains what funeral professionals do. Maybe we can even link that episode to this one. But like, that is important for you to understand that there is a lot of working things going on behind the scene. And I think if people knew how much work funeral professionals do, it would make more sense why they're seeing the numbers that they're seeing. But ultimately, there is different options you can have. And if you're really concerned or worried about that, go in and talk to a funeral professional right now. They will show you. They will literally, answer any questions that you have.
Well, and that's another thing too. Just real quick, my expensive terminology could be way different from somebody else's too. So when we say expensive, what comes to my mind is the people that are looking for what's the lowest price here. And in that situation, yeah, funerals are expensive no matter what it is. I could say it's $100 for somebody that could be expensive. So there is many options in the funeral homes, and every funeral home has different prices and different options. So maybe you don't find it in the one funeral home, but go to another one if you're not comfortable with that funeral home. That's my suggestion.
Well,
what's interesting? I was thinking about this the other day, especially with this question. I know so many people that will go and price out cars, used cars. They will go to like 7 or 8 different car places. I don't know if a lot of people do that with funeral homes. Do they? In your
There's
experience?
a lot of the problem with funeral homes, and it's a good problem to have, but it's also like there is loyalty still to a lot of funeral homes. So I think a lot
Yeah,
of
but also I think it's like the timing, right? Like that's
100%.
the last thing you want to do is think about money
Money. Well, it's also
and I think that also might be stemmed from where this expensive, myth comes from is, you're at such a vulnerable time and you're getting charged money for something at such a vulnerable time. But like you said, Nick, it's like this is a business, man. Like you guys have to, keep the lights on. You're doing a great service, but you got to be able to keep your lights on. It's not like you're millionaires,
Well, I always think about like cancer, right? A cancer diagnosis. Like you don't go in and talk to your cancer doctor and be like, "Oh, I didn't think we were going to have to pay this bill." Like you don't do that, right? So, and I would imagine if anybody has had any hospitalizations, it's surprising how much money
Oh my
is involved
gosh.
in operation
Horrible.
stuff like that. Thank God for insurance, right? But like at the same time, when you get that bill, you're like, what? What? Like,
Yeah, but that bill comes like way later, and I feel like the funeral stuff comes like in the beginning or something. I don't know.
we
And
don't have an
maybe
we don't have the opportunity as funeral professionals. I'm not one, but I'm going to speak for Ben. They don't have the opportunity to wait 6 months to
absolutely it
send
has to be
that
done
bill.
so fast. Like everything is going so fast. So yeah, we could talk for a whole episode on this, but we have many other
Let's go. Yeah.
myths to bust. So you guys were correct with what AI was saying too. It says funerals can be affordable, and there are many options to suit different budgets. So it's all about the budget. And an empathetic funeral director, or funeral professional,
Thank you.
There you
like Benny is going to help you. Like these people care about you and they're not all about the money. So, myth busted.
Myth busty bust.
Do we have a sound effect for a myth busted? Bow.
Just every time we're gonna keep getting in we need like a laser. Like
Myth
Yes, that's a good myth bust song. I
bust.
like it.
Another
Okay.
myth bust.
All right. So, we got another one. All right. You guys ready?
Yeah,
Yep.
let's do it.
Cremation means you can't have a funeral service.
Ooh, that's well, it's true and false, and I'll explain why. It would actually, you can have a cremation, still have services. You can have a memorial gathering. You can have a memorial service, which basically is visitation and funeral afterwards. A
celebration
cremation,
of life, right? Tim?
celebration of life. Or, hear me out on this. You could have the funeral before you get cremated, and therefore you can have a funeral before cremation. So you could do so many options. You could have the service and then be cremated. You could be cremated and then have services. There are so many options, and I think that's especially a lot of you listeners out there, and it's not silly, and don't think you're silly or stupid because you didn't know this. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't realize there are so many options when it comes to cremation. It's a beautiful problem to have, but that sometimes is the problem, that there is so many options with cremation.
I'm going to pause you. I think what you're talking about is a definition of what a funeral is. So I think a lot of people are getting confused. I think I would get confused if I didn't understand what you meant by that. When you said that you could have a funeral before cremation, why?
Okay, because you could still have a visitation, which is the body is present in some sort of casket. That can either be a rental or it could be a full casket. It's that's a whole different conversation too. But then
It could be a closed casket.
You
too.
could literally have a service. So you'd have the same funeral that everybody's used to, or either in the church or in the funeral home. And then instead of going to the cemetery, the family just leaves, everybody leaves, and then the individual then gets sent to the crematory where the cremation takes place. That would be a funeral visitation and funeral service.
Right.
before cremation. Does that explain that?
What I was saying to you is like I think what you're saying is that to be a funeral, the body has to be present.
Correct. In terminology, yes.
That's what I
And
mean.
we've
That's-
talked about this. We've talked about this before.
So when this question is asking about a funeral service, it's kind of tricky because to have a funeral service, you must have a body present if we're going that terminology.
correct.
So cremation means you can't have a funeral service. Technically, if you are cremated, you can't have a funeral
Correct,
service.
and that's why I was saying you can have the memorial
Right.
service and
But
gathering.
that's what I was
but you
trying to-
still could have a service before you were cremated.
Before, and that's what I was trying
Yeah.
to explain is what's the difference. It's because the body is present.
And it's semantics at that point.
Right. It's terminology. I just wanted the listeners to understand what we
I
were
see what you're
here.
saying. Because I have been to a couple funerals where the urn is there, but it's more of like a ceremony. It's like
And that's
it's not
technically not
technically
a funeral.
Yeah.
That's where
the
you
body's not
hear.
present.
That's
It's
where
at
you hear
the church.
Yeah,
Yep.
you hear the memorial gathering or
Yeah.
services or
Celebration.
Memorial. It's a memorial gathering. Yeah. Okay. So you guys, man, you and AI are on the same wavelength. Let me tell you, because it says you can have a funeral service with or without the body present before cremation.
Bust.
So that, bam.
That's the one. Busted.
But then we get into the technicalities and all of that stuff. But yes, it's possible, people.
All right, next one. What do we got?
Okay, funeral directors take advantage of grieving families. Oh my gosh,
Ben-
right
Ben-
through the heart.
We're going to just let Ben sit down for this one because he's a little subjective. I'm going to say this. Just like any field out there, there is bad apples. So let's just be very clear about that right off the get-go. I think I would be ignorant to say that there is none out there that are taking advantage of people. There probably is. Unfortunately, there probably is. Just like there's politicians out there that really don't care about you. They care about themselves,
Mhm.
right? It's just, I guess what I'm saying to you is like lawyers always get a bad rap. There is some good lawyers out there. My problem is that, again, we're trying to put everything in a box and say that if one funeral director is a bad dude, then they must all be. That is very incorrect. And unfortunately, there has been books written about corrupt funeral professionals. Jessica Mitford wrote one. With that being said, there is a lot of funeral professionals that do care and will go above and beyond for their families. They are not there to take advantage of grieving families. With that being said, do they have to run a business? Absolutely. So I guess my thing is again, this is semantics because I guess I would have to ask the person who's bringing this up, and it's AI, so it's really difficult to have that person tell me. But
Robots. It's the bot.
I would imagine that a lot of people have had a poor experience with maybe a funeral professional, and then they kind of throw that out as all funeral professionals are that way.
Okay, well, besides that, though, what is your myth-busting answer?
I would
to
imagine,
this?
at least in my subjective experience, that around me, at least, most, if not all, of the funeral professionals that I know, and I know quite a few of them, Ben knows quite a few more, and he will speak to his experience. They all pretty much do everything they can to care for their families. So I know so many that will bend over backwards for their families. And again, the families will never know this because funeral professionals are they're very quiet about what they do. It's a calling, so they feel privileged and honored to do what they do. But you don't hear the good stories about funeral professionals. You always hear the negative ones. So I think the society has viewed funeral professionals as people that take advantage. The truth of the matter is they don't. That's my opinion on that.
Usually the bad funeral directors or the ones that are doing things that are shady, they tend not to be funeral directors for very long.
Mhm.
So usually if you have a funeral director that's gotten years under their belt or her belt or their belt, you can have a good know-how that they are doing it for the right reasons and are good people at the end of the day. Do we make mistakes? Absolutely. If any of you out there has never made a mistake, let us know because I've never met that person. but I can tell you that we are honest, humanistic people. That's the best. Yeah. So my thing is, do they take advantage? No. If they're good funeral directors, no, they do not.
Okay. Well, I gotta say, Nick almost got it literally word for word. So give yourself a little sound effect right there. Woo! Busted. All right. So it says most funeral directors are compassionate professionals who aim to help families through a difficult time, which was pretty much exactly what Nick said. And Benny, of course. There's going to be some bad seeds, but you know what? Most are compassionate. All right. You can't plan your own funeral.
False. There's so many ways you can plan your own funeral, to the point where we literally had an episode called Living Funerals, which is literally you can experience your own funeral. You can set it up. You can have everybody attend and literally go through your funeral as if you're dead, but you're there. But also
We've also had the pre-planning one too.
Exactly, which I was going to get into next. The next thing you can do is you can go into any funeral home and you can pre-plan your funeral. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to fund it. You can literally go in, pick out everything, have an idea of how many days you want it, what church, if you want that, what pastor or priest, or if you want it spiritual and non-secular, you can do it that way too. You can have everything planned and written out with your biographicals too, so that when that day comes, it makes it so much easier on your family or whoever's in charge of your funeral. So you can absolutely pre-plan your funeral.
And we've had an episode on that in the past.
I'm just going to say ditto because he's got it right.
All right. Well, I'm telling you, AI says the same thing. Let's give it a little bustin' sound effect.
Busted.
Woo! All right. It says pre-planning your funeral is a common practice that can ease the burden on your loved ones. And you pretty much said exactly that. Way to go. Way to go, Benny.
We've been busting.
I know. We do know our stuff.
Is it raining?
Woo!
Okay, so the next one. A body must be buried in a casket.
That is false. There are so many different versions of a casket. Not to mention, they still make coffins, which is like pinch toe, so you don't have to be in a casket. Also, there are what's called green burials. So literally, you can be put in a shawl or a garment or a wicker basket, or there is literally you can have your body mulched or terramation. You can.
Well, it said body in the ground.
Oh, it did say. So you had to say. Okay.
So green burials would be yes.
It said a body must be buried in a casket.
Buried.
It didn't say in the ground. Well, I guess buried would be in the ground.
Buried would be
because you would say entombed if it was a sarcophagus.
Yeah.
So
again, we're going semantics.
So the answer is no. Does not have to be in a casket. I
think that's what we
final
just
answer.
Yeah.
All right, let's get that button going on. Myth busting.
Busted.
You got it. Literally almost word for word. The answer that AI has is the alternative options like shrouds, natural burial containers, and green burials. All right. So the next one is only specific type of casket is allowed.
I'm gonna speak for Ben. Can probably go in more definition of this. There is, I would imagine, there is certain cemeteries or certain places that require certain materials, if you will, for caskets. Obviously, we're going to be a little bit biased here because we're talking about the state of Michigan, but there is other states out there that require different things. I always think back to what is it, Louisiana, with when all the caskets were floating out of the ground and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that obviously.
Wait, what? You mean it was it like a hurricane? What happened?
Katrina took, well, when Hurricane Katrina came in, because they in certain states they don't require vaults, the caskets were actually floating out of the ground with the
Oh my goodness,
With
I
the
did
hurricane, yeah.
not
they
know
were
about
like
that.
they were like ending up cities or towns like 2 towns over.
But you got to realize too, like
Wow.
the entombments too, they were being busted open by the hurricane.
Busted, like myth busted?
Myth busting.
Busted.
But you don't have to have any specific casket, to be honest. Doc is bringing up certain situations, like there are certain caskets that are required by cemeteries, not by the law. We've already stated this. But in all honesty, you could have a wood casket, you could have a metal casket. They're making plexiglass caskets. They're making all sorts of different kinds of caskets. Like I said, they still make coffins, so that already is a different way. To be honest, there really isn't, but there is a wide, I would say, range of not only cost but also um, what kind of materials the caskets are made of. But we already talked about green burials too, so
Right.
like you don't even have to have a casket.
Well, and the other thing is times have changed. Like when you go back a couple generations, you had to go through the funeral professional to get the casket, and they would go through a company that they worked with. Right nowadays, you can literally go Amazon.
Well, I
I
mean,
think
you
you
can
can
even go
Amazon
back
buy
further, Doc.
Costco.
You could even go back further where the funeral director was literally making the casket
was
for
outside.
the specific person. They usually made furniture.
I always think the Wild Wild West. You know,
Wild Wild West, baby.
they were like outside, like
Hammering away.
size
Mhm.
it up, people.
Mhm.
Oh, Johnny, you're looking a little rough.
Here's
Come
your
out
kitchen
here.
table, and here's Mr. Brooks's coffin. back then.
Could you be buried in a cabinet?
Yeah, of course you could.
I mean,
Why
what
not?
if it was a really good cabinet,
A nice
Oh,
chair,
like the cabinets behind you.
like a wardrobe?
a nice oak,
Ooh, I'm partial to the walnut.
the walnuts, baby.
Yep.
Side
Oh,
of the
that's a good
barn.
one. Yeah. Okay, so I'll just get to the AI answer of this, which is essentially what you said. So way to go.
Busted.
Busted.
Yeah. It is you
Bust.
can choose from a wide variety of caskets, including eco-friendly options,
Yep. Green berry.
which is the green burials. All right. Are you guys ready for another one?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is
Absolutely.
good. People need to hear this stuff. Cremation is against all religions.
Oh, that is so false. There are specific religions that actually prefer or require cremation. So that is false. To be honest with you, most religions aren't against cremation anymore. They might have been years ago, but most religions notice it as a perfectly fine way of final disposition. Yes, I'm sure there is, just like everything else, there's a religion for anything nowadays. So I'm sure that there are some religions that have certain traditions that would be against it. But to be honest, I would actually flip that and say most religions are actually for cremation, not against it.
Yeah, I'm gonna do ditto with Benny.
Okay. So that one is similar. Many religions permit cremation, though practices vary.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, for the next one, you guys ready?
Let's do it.
Funerals must be religious ceremonies.
I'll let you take that one, Doc.
Incorrect. Funerals do not have to be religious ceremonies, and I think as time has moved on, I think more and more are tending not to be religious ceremonies. I just think times have changed, and I don't think religion is what it used to be. With that being said, I think we're going more towards a spiritual awakening, if you will. So, my answer is no. They do not have to be a religious.
Yeah, and
Thing.
there's a lot of non-secular, and there's a lot of atheist families that we take care of, and there isn't a religious factor in it. It could just be a complete memorial towards the individual. So the answer is no. You do not have to have a religious ceremony.
All right, put that sound effect on there. Woo! Yes.
Busted.
Yes, Benny. Benny and Nick, you both got that very well. Funerals can be secular or personalized to reflect the deceased's beliefs. So it's all about what the deceased beliefs is all about.
Well, 10 for 10, Benny boy. Benny boy.
Oh, that was 9. We got a number 10. This is going to be the last one for this part. We're going to be doing a part 2 of this because we have 10 more myth busting.
Never my strong point. Apologize.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yes. Okay, so this is the last one for this episode, but we're going to have a whole other episode of keep busting these myths, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay, so number 10, the last one for this episode. Funerals have to take place in a funeral home.
That is false. Obviously, we have funeral masses, so that's at church. We have funeral services at churches. We've had funeral services in gyms. We've had them at people's homes. But to be honest, you have to take in consideration that you are going to have the public, unless it's a private ceremony. So there is some, let's be honest, some you got to make sure some safety issues are with these buildings, or just practical. If you're going to have a casket, you got to make sure it gets through doors.
Right.
And a lot of doorways, especially older homes, don't have it. That's specifically the reason why we went from the home to funeral homes, because most homes aren't fitted to have the wake, as quotes, what they used to call, which is you'd have the body present in the home. But it's not necessarily saying that you can't have a service at the home or at a funeral. Or during COVID, we had to do some pretty interesting things. We had a visitation and funeral at a farm, and that was really cool. It was very different. We've had them at the actual cemeteries before. So you don't have to have it in a funeral home. The funeral home is just a very convenient place to have it because it's built and made and specifically has everything that's needed to facilitate a funeral, but it's not a necessary place of funerals or visitations.
But if you got a cool place in mind, talk to your local funeral.
Absolutely, because there is some questions that we do. Because you only get one shot. There's only one play. There's opening night and that's it. You don't get a rerun. So
you don't get a matinee.
No. So you got to make sure. You got to make sure a lot of those things. But in most part, the answer is no. You do not have to have it in a funeral. Final answer.
Ditto.
All right, put that button on. You guys got it.
Your myth has been busted.
All right, good job, guys. It says funerals can be held in various locations, including homes, parks, and other meaningful places. Bam! All right, so this is the end of part 1. We're going to have a part 2 of keeping these myths bustins, keeping the myth busting going.
So as we did 10 out of 10, Doc, I'm not tooting my own horn, but we did a pretty good job there. I would like to thank you listeners out there. As always, send us out, share us with anybody who's dealing with grief. If you're interested, or maybe you know somebody who's interested in one of our career paths, send this podcast out their way. If you have any questions or thoughts, or maybe you have a thought on one of these myths, contact us at letstalkaboutdeathpod@gmail.com. Yet again, that's letstalkaboutdeathpod@gmail.com. This is our mission. Our mission is to get this out to as many people and to start having a better conversation about death and loss. And give us those stars, give us those reviews. And if you are not talking about death,
then you are not.
We're not living. We're going to do this AI. Okay.
Yeah, because if you are not talking about death, you
are not living.
You are not living.
You are not living?
You got mail.
I was just thinking that. All right. Thank you, everyone. Until next, myth bustin'.
Bustin'.